Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
Okay, this time I chose the movie. And again, this is another movie. It's not a blockbuster. I don't know. Had you ever even heard of this movie before?
Okay, as I started watching it, I was like, I've seen this before. But yeah, I didn't remember very much about it. So
okay. So had you watched the movie all the way through?
I think so. I was trying to, like I said, I was trying to remember, like at the very beginning of the movie, I was like, wait, dominoes? Like the little things were like popping up. And then, but it was a totally different experience than I had before.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, the backdrop of this movie for me was I had a good friend who had been, she was going through ovarian cancer and she was going through chemo, and I was going to spend the day with her. And another one of her friends was coming, and we were just going to spend the day with her while she was getting her chemo, bring her what she needed and be with her. And this other friend said, hey, there's this new movie. It's out in theaters. Let's go see it. It's called Collateral Beauty. And so because of that experience, it was very, deep to me in the beginning, the first time I saw it.
okay.
And so it's always been, it's one of my favorite movies. It's one I bought, right? Like it's on my Amazon account. I can watch it whenever I want because it did bring so much meaning for me. The movie, I don't know if I've said it, it's called Collateral Beauty. And when they said that, you're like, what's that? But then when you watch the movie, you understand the depth of that title, So yeah, so tell me about the first time you saw it and how it was different the second time, tell me more about that.
Okay. Well, I guess little pieces were coming back to me, and I actually don't think I really liked it when I first saw it. I just kind of felt like it was a little empty. And the second time I watched it, I totally got it. I understood the meaning of it. And a couple of things kind of came to my mind when I was researching it. So I decided to go to listen, see if there were any other podcasts about it to see what people had said.
Yeah.
And most of them were religious ones. So I was wondering if collateral beauty is a religious phrase. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I listened to one called Movies We Hate, and I wanted to find out why they hated it. And they panned it because, they were talking about Will Smith always has a tear in his eye and, talking about different parts of it that maybe didn't work so well. But I guess what I was thinking about was maybe it's like the magic eye. Remember the magic eye pictures when we were kids?
Yeah. Yes.
And you're like looking at it and you're like, oh yeah, that's colorful. That's fine. But then when you stop and like look at it, then you're like, oh no, I get it now. And I think that's what the second watching did for me. The first time I was just seeing the colors. And then the second time, like I saw the image and I understood what it was talking about. And yeah, I found a lot of meaning in it. There were a lot of parts that spoke to me.
Yeah. Like, okay, first of all, just the idea of grief, what grief does. Grief, the character in the movie, which is Will Smith, which right now that's all a little controversial, but hey, there's a little redemption in this movie to me, I think, because there was this deep grief and it changes who you are sometimes, and it doesn't have to be, in this case, it can be a death, but it can be anything that turns your life upside down, anything that unravels what you thought you had tightly, neatly in place, right? And that's why I think at the beginning of the movie, he's a marketing person and he's using these words like, hey, people care about three things, they care about, what was it, like love, they need more time, they don't, death scares them. He was telling his people, like, this is how we get people to buy our stuff, is through with these kinds of these are what's important in people's lives, right? And then, his life gets flipped upside down, and this is the first few minutes of the show, right? And you see that he starts to interact with those things in a very different way, in a very, in a way I just thought was very clever or creative, to really think about what time does, in our lives, how love can be so wonderful and then the worst pain we've ever had, um, back to time, how it can go too quickly and other times just drag on. The character in the show, he could care less whether it was day or night, right? Time was meaningless when he was grieving or when his life had been turned upside down. And then just the idea of death here, it was so excruciating to have this death in his life. And yet I think he would have died at any second. Do you know what I mean? Like death became nothing.
Oh yeah.
Something he would have craved almost. And yet, so very different opposing viewpoints of these particular elements that we deal with as human beings here walking on the earth, right?
Right.
So the idea was, I thought it was, I don't know how much, I guess we've kind of spoiled it a little bit, but this in the movie, he's in such grief. And again, we kind of talked about in another episode about, that trauma look, where you're just this hollow person, nothing smells right, nothing feels right, nothing looks right. And he's just in the state, and that he's got a big company and they're struggling, because he's kind of just checked out for years of time after this death. And, and the company's starting to fail. And so now all of a sudden lives of lots of different people are starting to be affected by this one man's really unraveling. Right. And so in order to get him back in, well, what they're trying to do, I think they're trying to let people they're trying to claim him as kind of crazy so that they can, do this deal. Right.
But were they also really trying to help him too? That's what I didn't know.
Think so. I mean, they had different, first of all, I think like the Kate Winslet character, I mean, such a deep character. She had given up this window of her life to become a mother, which was one of her dreams. And so, but she was very caretaking, and she really, really did care for him and really did want, she really wanted to help him, the other, the other guy he had so much issues going on in his life, that he, I think he was just like, do what we got to do. I got bigger issues, and then the co-owner character, I think he had so many issues in his life and he was such the bad guy, like it didn't matter. He had accepted, I am just this terrible person.
I'm not, I'm going to act that way.
Yeah. It was just like, this is what we got to do. I don't like it, but I'll, yes, I'm a terrible person. Let's go, fine. And so again, this idea of each of them going through, so I don't know if you watch it again, I mean, like I say, I've watched it a lot of times. So, the one that was, the characters so anyway, let me finish that. So they hire some actors to kind of show up and be in his life, because he started writing letters to these time, love and death, just kind of his own kind of way to process what was happening. I mean, it was kind of ugly, like he was kind of angry at those things. And they decided to let somebody show up, and so that kind of to make him appear as if he had like lost his mind, as if he was it kind of that, so that they could declare him, insane, and they could take over his shares of the business and get this figured out. They wanted to sell the company because it was just going under. So each of them, it touched their lives. I think Kate, hers was time, wasn't she associated with? Didn't she take
the
on
time character?
Yeah, because they each kind of took one of it, like that was time, and then and then Mira. I mean, that was the thing about the show. It had so many like really, really good actors, big names in the show. So
we're probably making it really confusing, by the way. If you haven't seen it, like you're probably gonna be like, what? Like there's
well, I hope not. Maybe we'll, I hope not. But
I think if you watched it, would totly make sense.
It totally makes sense.
If you weren't watching it, you're like, wait, why is she time? But yeah, I get what you're saying.
You're right. So it's like I'm trying to dance between, giving it all away and not, but but it becomes part of their own lives, you know, trying to really, that each of them had their own journeys to go on, in order to really connect with themselves, really find so that's the meaning of the title, the collateral beauty. So life happens, life explodes, you know, and it causes a lot of collateral damage. And sometimes we're in the midst of that collateral damage, and it's not fair. No one's gonna, you know, we are not here to say that it is fair at all. But usually in those moments of unraveling, if we try, if we, you know, there's a big difference between, you know, like pretending like everything's fine, you know, saying everything's fine, no, nothing's wrong, you know. We don't want to go on all the way to that direction, but if we can stop and really find that there is collateral beauty, you know, I'm amazed at the person that comes into your life and just right at the right moment, you know, or the time when you're really suffering and someone lets you go in front of them, you know, like it would be really easy to just, you know, push those aside and say, nothing, you know. It takes effort to really allow the beauty to show through, I think. And I think that's what this show really, to me, really found that balance between allowing the reality of what happened to be there, you know, because I think that in a way he's Will Smith's character is trying to run from it in a way. He's just trying to numb out so that it just doesn't exist in a way, and that wasn't helpful. So he had to go on this journey to find some kind of redemption in meaning in this experience. And
what I loved about like that idea, kind of expounding on that, is it's that beautiful symphony of life that one event, like we don't experience it in a vacuum, right? And how they were helping him, but in turn they were helped, and like he was kind of healed. Like that part's beautiful. And I've noticed that in my own life, like those beautiful moments that you weren't expecting that just heal. To me, that's collateral beauty. Another part that was collateral beauty to me is towards the end, as he's kind of coming to the realization of, okay, yeah, things need to change. I need to sign over these papers. He had this moment of extreme clarity where he was able to tell everybody, hey, I know you're sick, and hey, this. And it was like his intuition had opened because of that grief experience.
You're right.
And I have 100% experienced that in my life. Like these horrible moments that you're like, I never want to do that again. But it made me, it sounds so, I don't like how trite it sounds, but like without that, it wouldn't have opened me up to all these other beautiful parts. It wouldn't have allowed me to see what I can see.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, because they all had secrets. They all had things they were trying to keep a secret, you know, and they all had that same, like, you know, deer caught in headlights look too, you know, because they had things going on in their lives, but he saw it. He had the ability to see through what was in the way and say, I see you. You know, that was really magical, really touching moment. So I think it came out in 2017.
Maybe, I don't know. That's what I heard.
One of those. So go back a little bit and grab that movie, you know. It's an emotional movie, you know, it's not funny. Although there's funny parts in it. It's got some funny parts in it, but it is an emotional movie, one of those for me at the time. And like I say, with that kind of background I had going into it, it was very meaningful to me to realize, to try and stop in the middle of the unraveling. You know, my friend was in the middle of treatment, and try and spot the good, beautiful in the middle, you know, to practice that in the middle, not just waiting until you're done and then looking back and, okay, that was fun and that was fun, but to really stop in the middle and look around at what is beautiful in every single day. You know, what really is beautiful to me, or speaks to me, or is a message for me. And that show kind of made it a practice for me. I think I've shared before, you know, when I go on walks, I look around and you know, there's a little leaf here or a little rock here or something that just says, you know, where I point out that's beauty, you know, that's the world, that's the universe, that's whatever trying to tell me, here's some beauty for your day. And I'm choosing to receive it, you know, and it's because because it's really easy for me to look at the collateral damage, right? I felt myself at a time in my life where I could have just lived in the collateral damage. The damage was all there was, right? There was no hope for or ability to see any beauty. And so the fact that I could learn to see beauty to me is like a miracle that I just never take for granted, because I've been on that other side. And so I'm just mirroring and what you said is like, I hate that it's true. It's not like, because I also, if I'm having a hard time, I don't want anybody trying to make me feel better, like, yeah, but think of all the things that you'll do. Think of how this will open you up. Because I had that too. It's like, yeah, but what if this is a moment for you, and that's where, maybe I'll just add, when someone is going through something, we have a video in the library that we talk about this, where it's like, think of yourself as a barometer. It's like, see what the situation calls for, if they're hoping for you to build them up, but don't do it as far as as it like, I don't want to say anything bad, if they're low or if they're angry or if they're tired or whatever they have, meet them where they're at, because that gives them the ability to find the beauty better than shoving a beautiful thing in their face and saying, I know, but see, this. So I think I think that part of that movie too was that I appreciated is that it did show, here, I'm getting emotional again. For a lot of the movie, he was in despair.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, that spoke to me because it didn't just quickly go away. It wasn't happily ever after. This person that passed away did not come back to life. It wasn't like, and the end, here we go, rewind, everything's fine. And sometimes movies can do that. But I really appreciated where they took some extra scenes that maybe would have been cut to show this despair of day and night, of risky behavior, of not wanting to eat, not caring about sleeping, for a long, long time. Because I identify with that. I get that. You don't see people for a while and think that, you think they're okay after a while, but we've had, I've both my parents are gone and I've lost a brother-in-law, and, things 6 months later, a year later, sometimes 3 years later, it pops back, right? In a way that you're like, I don't know why this is coming up right now again. And to lean into that grief a little bit, so that it doesn't get pushed down, but also, as to be able to, because I think as you move into the grief, because for me, let's see if this works for you.
Okay.
If I move into the grief and I'm thinking about those experiences that were beautiful and lovely and fine, I do have grief now connected with those experiences. But as I cry and as I allow them to come forth, then the beauty can kind of come out, then I can start to see them again as the good memories rather than just a memory of what was once, there and now is gone. The grieving is very important. Grieving is, in some cultures, a ritual. Grief is a process, and it's not just crying. It's because grieving means something's lost, and so we're being in that thing for a minute that's lost, and there are tears, but we all the collateral beauty is also there too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, maybe take my advice and watch it more than once too.
Yeah, good.
I think
good
that
advice.
might help.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, because I really did learn a lot more that second time. And the podcast I was listening to, they were complaining, just going back a little bit, that Will Smith wasn't in the first 2/3 of the movie. And it proves your point. Exactly. That is what grief is. You are not in,
right.
You're not involved in life when you're really in those deep depths of grief, and slowly you can find your way back.
Yep. Yeah.
Beautiful metaphor.
Yeah. I should pop this in here. Like, I also appreciated the scene on the subway where he's speaking with, I think it was Death. He's speaking with Death. And, and she's trying to say, yeah, but, she's probably in a happier place. Like it was almost like that kind of feeling. And he just calls her on it. And he's like, I've looked at this. I've read, he's like, I've read I've prayed. I've done philosophy. I've done, he was like, it's all nothing. Even the row your boat gently down the stream, he starts to sing. Remember, it was a powerful moment where he's like, nothing, I've done it all. I've done the work. It's not like I'm just sitting here letting it take over me. It robbed me. This death robbed me. I've tried. And I thought that was a powerful thing, because for those people that have been through, we've talked about faith transitions, whether you have this loved one that's taken in a really cruel way, whether you've had, some kind of big trauma come in and wipe you out, those people know, like, the process doesn't come very easily. You cannot just spiritually bypass the pain. It's there, and I felt like that moment on the train, to me, was, for the time in my life, the things that were happening, that spoke to me. It was like, even the little row your boat, like, hurts my soul. Yeah, life is but a dream. Great. Then let's do that.
Yeah.
That's really the best thing I can hope for, because everything else has been nothing for me, because we don't allow grief. We keep it away from our everyday lives. We push away from grief because loss is something we feel like we have control over. And yet grief is one of our emotions. It's one of the processes that, again, like you say, brings about other things, So I think as our society is better at grief and allowing for grief and recognizing when grief comes, it's a whole system. I said this before. My sister, her husband passed away when he passed away from cancer. When he was diagnosed, the doctors called him and say, be here at 3:00, another nurse here, you're going to need to go here. Like, he had a team of a dozen people taking over his life and making sure he was here and here, because he was in a life or death situation. And when he passed away, there was no one, that was really right. That was really there for her to say, okay, you have just had the emotional equivalent of a cancer diagnosis, or even the mental equivalent, the spiritual equivalent of a cancer diagnosis. All hands on deck. We need to grieve. We need to feel. We need to see the beauty, because the thing about Collateral Beauty is it doesn't miss the fact that there was damage, right? It doesn't, it knows, it shows, it proves that damage does happen in our lives. And, we kind of stay away from it. And that's why I think it takes us out a little bit. So anyway, yeah, watch the movie more than once and let us know in our DMs on social media, or drop us a line on the Wholeness Network info page. Let us know what you think. Maybe you have disagreements, but let's talk about it.
Yeah,
so,
I'd love to know.
Yep. So, all right, Collateral Beauty, one of my favorites.
When most people are asked what they want, they will answer, I want to be happy. But happy takes practice. And that's what the Wholeness Library is all about. So check it out free at thewholenessnetwork.com.